Absolutely. So I think as we seeing in a lot of ways, technology and the ability to use these types of things for fun and to deliver value doesn't exist in a vacuum. We see like where kind of at the whim of corporate structures and different types of governance structures with social situations, but also political context, right? And I think it's probably important for us to at least touch on, and we could have several, we could talk for days on this, but talk about what's happening in the political and legislative space. So we've recently seen the US's President Biden's AI executive order, certain things happening with the EU AI Act. So I'm wondering if you can give us a rundown of kind of the most important things in this space, particularly with respect to regulatory capture and development of foundation models.
Okay, so the big one is the EU AI Act, because it's got teeth. It's an actual act with actual laws and actual penalties, huge penalties. So for those that haven't been following it, the EU AI Act specifically regulated high-risk applications of AI. So, if your health insurance coverage is going to be denied by a machine, for example, that would count as a high-risk application of AI. It's impacting a human being in a way that could literally kill them, and generally
sounds like good regulation.
Yeah,
right?
good regulation. Yeah. Yeah. So generally it was focused on like, okay, there should be
The
like
applications.
human oversight. There should be auditing. There should be, that these high risk applications, should not create some kind of Kafkaesque nightmare for European citizens. And then late last year, early this year, there was a big influx of lobbying money coming from the so-called AI safety nonprofit sector, but it's entirely backed by tech billionaire money. And, they basically tried to get the EU to change the act to also cover foundation models, which were basically defined as any model bigger than the current biggest models. And they were successful. And so in, was it March, April, May? I can't remember. Anyway, first half of this year, a new version of the Act was drafted that basically added coverage of so-called foundation models. And yeah, this would basically mean you would kind of have to get permission from the government if you're allowed to compete with OpenAI. By definition, if you're going to create a model that's as good or better than the current frontier, then that's dangerous. And so that created a lot of controversy because it sure looks like regulatory capture to require a license to compete. Especially when there's already a whole act there about high risk applications, which is like, if you're going to use it to something that might hurt somebody, then you've got to follow these laws. And now it's like, no, it doesn't matter what you use it for. A general purpose computing device, you have to get permission to build one that's really good at computing. So then that was looking like it might go through until there was pushback from France, Germany, Italy, and Spain, or maybe three of those four. Certainly France and Germany.
These are companies in those countries?
Well, it's from the member states.
Yep,
but
okay.
they were being then lobbied by, their new sexy startups that would be outlawed from competing without permission, basically. And for no particular apparent reason, unless you believe in some kind of like killer robot dystopian future or something, which in theory is not what the EU AI Act is about. They never mention anything about a dystopian killer robot future. It's just meant to be about protecting EU citizens, in their real current needs. So yeah, now it's all up in the air again, and if it looks like maybe the act won't go through at all. But there's a whole lot of lobbying going on, as you can imagine. So the kind of possibilities are it might fail, it might go back to the high-risk application version, or the new foundation model version might go through. I can't imagine on what possible basis the EU citizens would be well served by the foundation model version, because as far as I can tell, it would basically entirely destroy the ability of any EU company to successfully create state-of-the-art models. And so everybody would, like, if I was a founder there wanting to create state-of-the-art models, I would be looking for visas of, like,
Yeah,
how can I go to UAE or Singapore or
innovation in
Australia? Yeah,
yeah.
it'll basically break it. And yeah, and for what? Like even if there are people concerned about killer robot dystopias, how on earth is this going to help? Because obviously everybody is just going to leave and do it somewhere else. So it seems bad all around. And it will be an important step, because if the EU does double down on this foundation model thing, then the people who have decided to double down will know perfectly well that it's meaningless without international cooperation. So then you could expect to see that lobbying head to the UN. And there's already UN activity happening here, as you can imagine. And we've seen similar things before, with things like the World International Property Organization, WIPO, that have successfully created, like, literally global requirements to basically have America's copyright regime, which I think pretty much all copyright lawyers agree is not doing the best possible job of furthering the arts and sciences, but is instead a massive regulatory capture of big copyright.
Yeah.
So we've certainly seen that happen before. It might happen again.